If you've ever wished there was an easy button, can I get an easy button for ERLS? iFlight's kind of done that with their brand new Commando 8 Lite. Guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do kind of a Bible tutorial slash review, a fully in-depth video about the Commando Lite because it is a new radio. It came out a couple weeks ago, but I've been playing with it and learning about it before I just jumped into a fast, quick, in quotations review. I don't want to do that to you guys, but I do, now that I know about it, I want to talk about it with you and make this video kind of a Bible tutorial if you're looking for that. If you bought this radio and you're wondering how in the world this works without a screen, iFlight's made it super easy for people to bind up their ERLS 3.0 receivers with this radio. You can buy their receivers to use with it, and we're also going to try to bind it up in a non-iFlight receiver in this video as well and see how that works. If they're paired up on 3.0 and 3.0, it should work. So we're going to walk you through all of the features of this radio in this review and Bible tutorial. And if you just bought one, you need to know how to use it. I'm going to show you everything you need to know about this Commando 8 Lite. Now, since I don't get paid to make these reviews and iFlight is not sponsoring me, I get to say what I want in these videos. So I'm going to tell you what my favorite radio is. And this one made Radio of the Year last year and still my daily driver. This is the Radiomaster Boxer, and this also has internal ERLS on here. You can get a stripped down version of this, a very basic version without all the bells and whistles that you see here with the Max Edition. You can get the standard edition with ERLS for around $99. And it is a mid-size radio. It's not as big as the TX16S, so I really like this kind of mid-factor form size radio in my hands. It feels good. And if you're looking for these types of gimbal stick covers, these are made by a company called Bestum Aerial. So I'll try to put a link down below for them. But the Commando 8, it's honestly the radio to get if you're a beginner and you don't want to deal with something like this. You don't want to deal with all the internal menus, the firmware updates, and on and on. With ERLS, let's be honest, it can be a pain in the ass. Like, it is really some of our worst nightmares. So getting those receivers updated, you have to use the Radiomaster USB module, which is great. You can do it the other way with the Betaflight pass-through and the ERLS configurator, but man, it gets complicated super quick. So what iFlight's trying to do with this product, I mean, and outside the Radiomaster Pocket, the smaller version of this is $65. The Commando 8 is $69 with no screen and no module bay in the back. But why in the hell should you pay $5 more for a radio that seems like it has way less features? It has 8 channels on here. It's not a 16-channel transmitter. It's pretty small. It does have an internal 4,000 milliamp battery in here that has up to 20 hours use. So I think that itself is pretty cool. It does come with batteries. The Pocket does not, so that's an additional expense you have to buy. You have to buy some 2 18650s to run in there. But 20 hours of working time on here is not bad. This also is for beginners because not only do you have a built-in battery, it also has kind of a less range than the other Commando 8s out there. Next step up from this one gets you 500 milliwatt and a screen, but that starts at $139. This one's $69. It's 100 milliwatt. The biggest, furthest range you can get out of a Commando 8 is going to be the ERLS 915 version, and that one comes in at 1 watt. Now, if you're worried about range, you can spend an extra $10 and you can get the Commando 8 Lite 2.4 TX antenna. This is the external antenna. It plugs in with the UFL connector on the external module inside the radio. It's not super hard to plug this in. And once we take all the bolts off the back, we can snap the radio in two, open that up, and you can also access this module bay through these 2 M2 bolts right here. Take these off and you have full access to the external module bay. But you'll have to take off the back of the transmitter to be able to put this antenna inside this hole right here, because for some reason they didn't extend this through the back. When you take this off, you just have this other piece of plastic in the way and makes it a little bit hard to get to. After you remove these 900 screws on the back, you can get to the inside of this radio. The Commando Lite has 4 switches available on the very top of it. It has the right momentary button switch right here, and this is auxiliary 1. This is the one that they tell you to make your arm switch. We also have auxiliary 2 here, it's a 3-position switch. We have auxiliary 3 here, also a 3-position switch, and auxiliary 4 is another momentary switch. A nice feature for people traveling and you don't want to bust your gimbals up, they are removable sticks on this. So it's very nice that you can take these sticks off and not risk breaking them in travel. However, once you take your sticks off, you have no cubby to put them in. There's nowhere to put these on, so you'll be responsible for holding on to these while you're traveling. And if you want to use auxiliary 1 as your arm switch, it is the Express LRS low latency switch, and that's why they like you to use that one. The Lite also features 2 5 push-button menu navigations, and we'll show you about how these work coming up in some tutorials in this video. We also have 4 LEDs here. That's a full charge, 75, 50, and 25% there. If you look on the very bottom, there is a dummy SD card port, so you can't put anything inside that. If you press once and press again, it will turn the radio off. Same thing, to press it once and hold again for 2 seconds will start up the radio. You can see the LEDs go across, and then this will turn blue here. And if we want to check the radio status in the battery while it's off, we can press this once and it'll show you the LEDs light up 1, 2, 3 right there. And this is how mine came charged from the factory. On the bottom, we also have a USB-C port, and this is for 2 things: firmware updates, and if you want to hardwire this to your computer, you can also use this with most FPV simulators in Steam, which is pretty cool. These 5-position menu buttons can also be used for left and right roll and pitch trim, as well as yaw and throttle trim. If you press the joystick twice in one direction, it will reset the trim back to center. Now let's show you how to bind the Commando 8 Lite. It is pretty simple. It's based on the 3 plug-in series. If you plug in the battery 1, 2, 3 times, 1, 2, 3, and you'll see that this blue light starts to flash twice. If it's flashing twice, it is in bind mode, and we can see it is flashing twice. Now what you want to do is press and hold on the power button, and this will start beeping, and once it stops beeping, it'll be bound. This should also be solid blue, and as easy as that. As long as you're using ERLS version 3.0 on here and here, you are good to go, and no crazy stuff. By the way, it's always recommended to take the props off your quad when you're doing any type of bench work, whether it's inside Betaflight or you're binding up a receiver. Now, typically when we unplug a battery, you'll hear telemetry loss, but this is running its own firmware. So what happens when you unplug the battery here from your quad, you'll hear this. Just a mild haptic feedback on here, and then your light's gonna blink once and go back to blue. And again, once you see that blue light, you can press your arm switch, and you are now bound up and ready to fly. Now I'm going to show you how to calibrate the sticks on here. If you find that your quad is drifting, maybe you have a trim button off center. Most flight controllers, they don't need trims. So if you're a beginner, don't use trim to try to level out your quad and make it stay in one place. Typically, we don't have position hold on these drones, and they just will drift left or right. It really doesn't have much to do with the radio's functions or the flight controller. So you want to keep everything centered here. But if you want to calibrate your sticks, that's a pretty easy process. We're going to go ahead and press and hold for 5 seconds on this right-hand button menu, and you'll see that it starts to flash on the first one. Now press it again, and you will see that the second one starts flashing. Once that one starts flashing, what you need to do is place the stick in the center and press it again, and that will give you a beep. And once your third one is beeping, go ahead and move the sticks in this type of direction. Left, right, up, and down. Do not circle them. If you circle them, the calibration will be wrong. Left, right, up, and down, and press the button again, and then it will go to the 4th LED. And now once your 4th LED is flashing, go ahead and hold that again. It will exit the stick calibration. Charging the Lite's pretty easy. All you need to do is plug it into your power AC adapter and plug in your USB-C cable here on the bottom of the radio. And now you can see that this one is flashing, so it is charging about 75% to 100. Once you have all 4 LEDs, it's all the way at 100. If it gets low, like a low battery status, and you've been flying for 20 hours, it will start to beep, and that needs recharging. Using the Commando 8 Lite with an FPV simulator is pretty easy. All you need is a USB-C cable that can transmit data. Make sure it's a data cable, and go ahead and plug in the USB-C port on the bottom, the same charging port on the bottom. plug this side into your computer, and it works with popular simulators. Those you can download and play on Steam, something like Trip and DRL, Velocidrone, and others. I think Velocidrone is probably my favorite right now. It doesn't have the best graphics, but it feels the most real time on my computer. My Lite came set up in mode 2, and depending where you are in the world, you might want a different type of mode. You might want mode 1, which is going to be throttle on the left, and it really just depends on how you fly. The most popular mode in North America is mode 2, which is throttle on the left, yaw here, roll and pitch on the right. Say you want to change it to mode 3 or mode 4, you can do that on the back of the radio by adjusting the pots. So go ahead and flip your Lite over, and we have 3 different access ports here. These need to kind of be popped off from this position, maybe with something sharp like a pair of snips or a small type of knife, and peel that back. Once you come off like this, you can have access to your Phillips head screws to be able to remove the plate. That's what we need to do in the next step to be able to add the external antenna. We're also going to remove this with the two M2 type of bolts. You're going to use your driver to do that. And then once you do that, you can see inside here, you can see that external module bay. There are also dip switches in here which let us change it from mode 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now if you want to change the centering aspect of your left throttle stick right here, all you have to do is, and I have them marked on the back of my radio so that I know which one it is. This one is the one that's going to bring the stick back to center, and I put a circle around that on both sides. As far as like tension and how free your stick moves, it's going to be this port right here. So we're going to start out with this one, and again, if you want to make this mode 2, we're just going to start loosening that by, I think, turning it to the left, and you'll see that it starts to bounce in the middle and go back to center. So now the stick is back to center, and if we want it to come over here and we want to loosen this side, and that may be the wrong port actually. So it was actually this one. Making mistakes live in the tutorial, so X that one out. That's not the one. It's actually this one. So here's what we're going to do, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to tighten up this side, okay? So it's this one right here, not that one. It's this one here. We're going to go ahead and tighten that up, and then that will start to loosen that stick up. And if it's too much play in it, as you start to tighten this up, you want it to go down and rest, but you also don't want it to be too loose. So we're going to go over here to the other side here, and we're going to start to twist this to the right, and that's kind of making it a little too loose, so we're going to go to the left, tighten it up a little bit, and now it should be working and not going back to center and have the right tension for us. So I don't like the way that feels, and you want the stick to come down and not bounce to the center. So we're going to tighten up again until it starts to come back down and stay down. And now it's tightened up enough that it's going to go down, and now we have an activated mode 2 style transmitter. And again, if you want to put it back to mode 2, go ahead and loosen up that center tension, and it should come springing back to center. And then again, if you want to adjust the tension, come over here and tighten or loosen this, and this will tighten up the way it feels to the outer edges, or loosen it up. Just depends on how you like it. And now on this side, we can do the same thing again, and instead of having this one be centered, we can loosen it, and it should fall back down to the bottom. And we will keep loosening that until it wants to rest on the bottom for us back into mode 2. Now that your radio is popped in half, go ahead and take your antenna, and you want the iFlight logo to be facing forward, so we're going to press it this way, and we're just going to push it down into the radio so that it seats properly. Now go ahead and grab your tension plate, and this is going to hold your antenna in place. So take one of your small Phillips head screws and put it on your screwdriver. Go ahead and place it through the hole here. This is just going to avoid you dropping it inside the transmitter, and we're going to go ahead and place it down and very gently start to tighten that up. You know, the antenna may move on you, but just go ahead and be real careful when you're doing that. And start to tighten that screw. And once it's nice and snug, you don't have to over tighten it because you're tightening it into plastic here. that should hold it pretty good. We're going to grab the second one, and once you install this second screw, we're going to install the UFL connector. So just take your time here. It's trying to run away from me. Be very careful. And we're just going to turn that screw in place here. Hopefully it's in. It's not actually in. It's going to take some finagling here. That's the thing about FPV. You really have to have a lot of patience. If you don't have a lot of patience in FPV, it can be kind of challenging for people. So just go ahead and tighten that side up. And once you get nice and snug, you can stop. I'm going to give the other side a few turns here because I don't feel like it went all the way tight for me. So I'm just going to move that. It still feels a little bit loose there. I can see it's not all the way tight. So go ahead and a couple more turns. It really wants to be pretty tight there. So if you think you did it, just check it by moving your finger across that plate. And now this should be held in place. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is plug in the UFL connector. Now this is your external module right here for your ERLS antenna. And we're just going to go ahead and grab this wire right here. We're going to kind of twist it around and go ahead and pinch it off right here. Just kind of, that way it wants to stay in that direction. And you're just going to lay it over top of this connector. And once you feel it's there, it's home, go ahead and press it down with your opposite finger or thumb. Sometimes it takes a second to line these up correctly. And you don't want to over push on things with electronics. So go ahead and take your time. Just press that down. Come on, baby. There you go. Now that you've already kind of pinched this off, it has a natural curve here. Now it's not going to fight being plugged in because you don't want that to come unplugged. Now after you have installed the antenna up top, put the two screws in, and now you've installed this antenna cable to the UFL connector, we need to switch some dip switches here to be able to make this antenna work. Pretty important that you have a sharp pair of tweezers to move these super tiny little dip switches. Now you notice that it says external here and internal here. So switching this switch back and forth here will change it from the internal antenna, and I already have it moved over to the external position, and the top bar up here turns it on or off. So we can turn it on or off there, but we want to make sure that both are in the external and on positions on this side. So on iFlight's YouTube page, they actually have a different looking set of dip switches for their final video. It says INT on this side and external on this side. If you are using that version and that's what yours looks like, not mine, maybe mine was a prototype and they decided to make it simpler, you can just push both of these switches over here to this right hand side, and like their video, that will turn on the external antenna. But if you have one that looks like mine, do it just like this and yours will be working. Now remember earlier when I mentioned changing the dip switches inside the radio to be able to make it mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, and mode 4. This is the dip switch right here. There are two switches here and they can be set in a number of combinations to be able to make your transmitter work in these 4 different modes. Now the first mode is mode 1. You want to have both of these switches all the way up, set all the way up for mode 1. If you are going to operate in mode 2, you want to have these switches all the way facing down. So you want to grab them and pull them all the way down, and that will put it in mode 2. So all the way down, mode 2. If you want to put it into mode 3, push number 1 all the way up. You can see they're labeled 1 and 2 here. That will put it into mode 3 if you move this one up and this one down. Okay. Now mode 4 is the opposite. So we're going to actually move this one up and this one down to activate mode 4, and that is the different modes that you can activate inside this radio. So at this point, I've taught you everything I know about the Commando 8 Lite, and it is a pretty simple radio to use if you're not looking to get into all the intricacies of ERLS, and I can understand that absolutely 100%, because this will make a great radio for me just to bind up to my version 3 ERLS receivers. And I also did test other brands of ERLS receivers, and as long as they're on 3.0, this firmware will work with them. So that's very important for you to know. You don't just have to use the iFlight receivers. Okay, so again, you don't have to use just the iFlight receivers if the receivers are all running 3.0 or newer. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the back on, and at this point you should be pretty well versed with this transmitter. I'm going to go ahead and kind of snap that into place, and getting this off was definitely not easy, but I do recommend taking a paint marker on the back side of your transmitter. Go ahead and label this one here, and that will loosen the stick up and let it go loose. If you want to change the tension of the stick, it's the one that I labeled with the cross here. And just remember earlier I made a mistake by putting my circle here for loosening the stick for operating in mode 2 to get it to mode 2 on the throttle on that side. But don't forget you have to change your dip switches inside again to make it mode 1, 2, 3, or 4, whichever one you want. And then also over here we had the tension adjustment over here, which I have labeled with an across there. So just make sure you have them labeled, and you shouldn't get too confused. But now we can go ahead and we can put the back cover back on with my two M2 bolts and pop these back on by hand. They should pop back into place. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to charge this radio up, and I'm pretty much ready to rock. So again, I think what iFlight's trying to do is simplify ERLS for new people getting into this hobby. I think the biggest pain for me in the last couple of years is ERLS and making that transition from TBS Crossfire over to ERLS. And something like this, what they're trying to do is just simply have you hold down this button until it starts beeping, plug in your quad 3 quick times. Once that light starts flashing, this stops flashing, everything goes solid blue, you're bound up. It can't get much simpler than that. So in a way, I was talking to somebody the other day, I think ERLS is killing the gold bind button that we have on all the old receivers now. Even TBS Crossfire has that bind button. There is finally a CLI command that TBS released that will allow your receiver to start flashing and go into bind mode for the TBS Crossfire Nano and other receivers. So that's kind of nice. That something we should have had 5 years ago. We finally got recently. That's pretty cool. But this one, no CLI commands and no firmware updates. As long as you have your receivers on ERLS version 3.0 with this radio, it doesn't matter whether it's an iFlight receiver or it's some other proprietary, non-proprietary receiver. We've already tested other receivers here in the shop, and they all work as long as they're on 3.0. So that's great for the time being. As long as ERLS is at 3.0, you're good to go with this radio. So I gotta say, it's a good radio for the price. And if you have to pay $5 more for more simplicity, if that's what you're looking for, that's the point of this radio. I wish it wasn't $5 more than the Radiomaster Pocket, because that is kind of the elephant in the room. But then again, like, simplicity. Press that power button 2-3 seconds and it starts to bind. You don't have to go into the computer menus, and some people don't want to do that. I get it. So that's what I've been wishing for years with ERLS. So at this point, you know about the whole radio. You've watched this video all the way to the end, and if you need help with your quad, your radio, your goggles, if you need to help us if you need us to set everything up for you, if you look on our Drone Camp's website, there is a link right here called FPV Service Center. That's been up for about 3 to 4 months now, and what we've been doing is we've been getting boxes in the mail from guys, complete setups. You send us your quad, radio, your goggles. You don't have to send the battery. We'll set up everything for you, all your switches inside Betaflight. It doesn't matter what type of radio you have. If it's ERLS or TBS Crossfire, we'll make it work, set everything up, flight test it, and make sure your goggles work and all that good stuff, and send it back to you in working order. So that starts at about $150 for the basic plan. There's a 2 quad plan that you can get that's $199. That gives you kind of a discount for 2. And if you have more than that, I mean, we had one guy recently send us like 7 or 8 quads in a huge box for us to set up. So we're just about to ship all those back to him now, and he's all pretty much ready to go with all those quads that he couldn't fly that he bought. And I know there's guys out there that have bought a bunch of quads that you just have sitting there on your bench that you can't get going. So if you need help with that, check out dronecamps.com. And if you appreciate my videos, please become a Patreon on the video, because we do a lot of help behind the scenes with your emails, here at the shop, setting up your quads in the FPV Service Center and with these tutorial videos. So I'm dedicated to the hobby now, 10 years in FPV, and I'm just obsessed with it, you guys, and I won't quit. And I won't quit you either. So I appreciate you. Thanks again for watching. I'm Justin Davis. I'll see you on the next one.